President Trump made a cryptic statement during a photo opportunity with military leaders, and it scared the crap out of me personally. We'll find out what it did to the fellow members of the panel, but first, let's take a look at it.
You guys know what this represents?
What all is it?
Maybe it's the calm before the storm.
What's the storming?
Could be the calm before the storm.
What storm, Mr.
We have the
President?
world's great military people in this room, I will tell you that. And we're going to have a great evening. Thank you all for coming. Thank you.
What storm, Mr. President?
You'll find out.
Give us a hint on your decision.
Thank you, everybody.
So you saw that. What was your reaction?
I feel like he's probably trolling, and that's kind of like the common wisdom that he's just saying things. But my biggest fear is that, like, we know this. I watched The Apprentice, but maybe there's other people in this world that are not as tasteless as I am and don't know who Donald Trump is. And so how are other countries looking at our president who's so reckless when speaking about the most powerful military in the world and maybe alluding to using it in some kind of like surprise attack on God only knows who? It's so scary to see how the rest of the world is taking this.
Yeah, Jimmy, you saw it. What's your take on this statement?
Well, I think he's just saying stuff, but you look at when he says the greatest military minds in the world are all in this room, and they couldn't figure out how to beat the Taliban for 18 years now, 17 years, the greatest military minds. They couldn't figure out how to do Iraq. They couldn't figure out how to do Libya. Here we are dropping 26,000 bombs in Syria, still can't figure out what to do. So the greatest military minds of the world don't seem to be getting shit done, if you ask me. Especially with unlimited budget, unlimited resources. And I don't know if you noticed, but those greatest military minds in the world standing on next to him, from what I could tell, were giggling as he was saying that shit.
That's what it is. To me, the giggling is what's crazy, because it seemed like you had two schools of thought in the room. You had the reporters, which I think you could get rid of reporter with everyone, colon, instead of reporter, colon. That reporter going, so what the hell does that mean? And there are audible people in the audience going like,
yes. Yeah. Well, the guy standing right next to him, I don't know who it was, but he was giggling. And so look at the guy second over to Trump's right. The second guy can't stop smiling. And I mean, if you show that video again, you don't have to play the audio, but you can see them all kind of giggling and laughing. And so those are supposed to be the greatest military minds in the world. So watch when he starts saying this stuff. You see that guy can't stop grinning like an idiot. I don't know who that guy's second over. And then this guy here with the crew cut, he's in the short hair contest. And and then he'll be good. He'll start, look at that guy, can't stop laughing. The world's greatest military people in the room, I'll tell you that. And then watch how this guy, like he's kind of half smiling the whole time. And who was the woman?
Melania. What if that's?
See, look, there he is. There he is. You see him giggling? Now that guy's got a whole chest full of medals. And he's standing there next to the clown president who's making ridiculous threats. And he's like, ha 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 ha.
So awkward.
It's like watching a film from North Korea, and everybody's afraid to say that guy's a maniac. You know, they're like, that's okay. He said that. Ha ha ha. I wonder who that guy is. We should find out.
Well, he has to be a Trump sycophant because that's the only people that get hired and get to stay in this administration. So to even be in that position, to be in that shot, he's got to be kissing Trump's ass in some way and finding him adorable. So he's surrounded by people that are not going to tell him, hey, that's a little crazy. You shouldn't say that. Like, it's almost their job now to laugh and make him feel good about himself.
A lot of people have said that they thought Mattis and Kelly were doing it for the service of the country, and they weren't sycophantists to Trump or anything. I have a hard time believing that. Trump doesn't let anybody around him who doesn't do exactly what you said. So
right, and then the other thing that happens in the video is when the reporter is so easily able to rattle off boiling point crises that are happening now that you get to choose from when he talks about the calm before the storm. I tried to write some down. Iran, North Korea, healthcare, the tax plan, just randomly firing someone at random. I also put down the piss tape guy talked to Mueller today.
Oh, Steele?
Like yesterday, yeah. So the guy who did the piss tape dossier, he spoke to Mueller. Maybe there's something about that. I also wrote down like random manufactured tragedy. Who knows, he could just make something up or nothing. Now we got a little more I guess we hoped we would get more from Sarah Huckabee Sanders. She was at the press conference today. Let's take a look at what she had to say about this moment.
Can you clarify the president's comments? Was he referring to military action when he said calm before the storm?
As we've said many times before, I know the president has, as I have from this podium on quite a few occasions. We're never going to say in advance what the president's going to do. And as he said last night, in addition to those comments, you'll have to wait and see.
But how seriously should the American public or American adversaries, for that matter, take these comments? Was it a joke? Was it serious?
I think you can take the president protecting the American people always extremely serious. He's been very clear that that's his #1 priority, and if he feels that action is necessary, he'll take it.
Was that anything?
No.
No, she doesn't know.
She doesn't know.
She has no idea.
Take him for his word. I think you can take blank for blank. Like that is her default statement and framing of any response where she doesn't know what to do. And I think when I compare her to Spicer, she's worse. She's worse than Spicer.
Really?
Because at least Spicer you could see was freaking out about it. Because he was like bright red and angry but with Sarah, I'm dizzy now. With Sarah Huckabee Sanders, she just is so good at that like dead face.
Deadpan, yeah.
You know?
But that's why I feel like she's good at the job. Her job is to just cover this and to try and make it seem as normal as possible.
Yeah.
And she never really changes the inflection in her voice. And I think she's really good at the job in a way that we never get answers from her. But I think that's kind of what they want, is someone who doesn't give us answers. And that's what's so frustrating.
There's another, an Axios reporter went on MSNBC, and he has certain sources within the White House and has ideas about what possibly Trump might be doing. Here's his take after doing some interviews of people behind the scenes.
I think there's a high degree of probability that he is trolling everyone. And in fact, I was talking to a senior official last night, somebody who I should stress is not on the NSC, who would not be privy to any covert operations. And they started laughing, saying, don't you get it? He's just trolling all of you. But of course, it's trolling with very serious consequences. This is what he does with national security.
And then he also gave an example of the application of this weird trolling approach as it pertains to other national security and international relations issues. Take a look.
We reported last week a private meeting inside the Oval Office discussing the South Korean trade deal. And he says to Robert Lighthizer, his chief trade negotiator, you tell them, I'm so crazy, I could pull out any minute. And that seems to be the sort of madman kind of approach that he's taking with North Korea, the sort of Nixonian, make these wild statements, these very destabilizing statements, and sort of let the chips fall where they may.
Do you take this? Is that what you think is happening?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I think is happening.
Why do you say that?
I just think that Trump said something. He's like all these people in the room. He feels he has to say something, and he's like, "Oh, the calm before the storm, huh? What does that mean? Fuck, doesn't mean anything. I just said something. I don't think he was really. I just think it was something he said.
Only Trump will make like a calm before the storm reference after 2 huge storms.
With another one on the way.
Yeah, with another one on the way. Like Puerto Rico happens. We just got done with his handling, mishandling, rehandling, manhandling of that situation. And he makes a calm before the storm reference. Like it's that doddering and stupid.
Yeah. Tillerson's right, he's a moron.
If you like this video, you'll love the whole TYT network. Check it out at tytnetwork.com/join.